The entire F1 community was shocked when Daniel Ricciardo announced his departure from the VCARB F1 team last week midway through the 2024 season. When the 2024 Singapore Grand Prix was completed, Ricciardo or his team showed no signs of terminating his current F1 contract. Anyhow, he has to step out of the VCARB driving lineup to make way for Liam Lawson, who's identified as a potential candidate to replace Sergio Perez, who's been underperforming since the beginning of the 2024 season. At one time, Ricciardo shined as a potential world champion, before making some controversial decisions on his own F1 career, which led to a huge downfall later. This is the story of Daniel Ricciardo. We're going to discuss about the rise and fall of his Formula One career in detail. Welcome back to Daily Grid. Before diving deep into the content, remember to show us some love by hitting the subscribe button and bell icon for all the best F1 content. Daniel Joseph Ricciardo was born on the 1st of July 1989 in Perth, Australia. His father, Joe Ricciardo, competed in the motor racing events held in Barbagallo Raceway in Wanneroo as a part-time racing driver, so racing naturally came to Daniel Ricciardo. Little Ricciardo also wanted to be a racing driver and started karting at 9 after joining Tiger Karting Club. Because of the skills that he showed as a racing driver at that stage, he got a promotion to the Australian Formula Ford Championship, as well as the National Formula Ford Series. However, his early racing career showed only a little success, as most of the teams that he competed with had uncompetitive racing packages. But Ricciardo didn't want to give up on becoming a racing driver and decided to move to Europe with the aim of shaping up his racing career. He started racing in Italy, which was the home country of his father. Young Ricciardo was able to finish the 2007 Formula Renault 2.0 Italia in 6th position, and it was sufficient enough to earn him a contract from the Red Bull Junior Academy. In the middle of the 2008 season, Ricciardo made his Formula 3 debut by joining the Formula 3 Euro Series Championship. He enjoyed considerable success there and then moved to the British Formula 3 Championship at the beginning of the 2009 season as a driver of the Carlin Motorsport team. In 2010, he moved to the Formula Renault 3.5 series and completed it as the runner-up, just 2 points behind the champion, Michael Aleshin. This performance was sufficient enough to give him a promotion to Formula One, and several teams were interested in getting their hands on him. As there were no vacancies in either of the F1 teams owned by Red Bull, he decided to make his Formula One debut with the HRT F1 team midway through the 2011 season. However, this happened under the full supervision of Red Bull management, as they didn't want to waste their investment. This wasn't the first time that he'd enjoyed the taste of a Formula One car, as he'd worked as the test and reserve driver of the Red Bull team for around 2 years. After showing some impressive performances in the 2009 Young Drivers Test held at Circuito de Jerez over 3 days, Red Bull management decided to contact him as the team's test and reserve driver for both Red Bull and Toro Rosso, alongside Brendan Hartley. He was able to represent the Red Bull team in the Young Drivers Test held at Yas Marina at the end of the 2010 season. Brendan Hartley was later dropped from the Red Bull Academy, assigning Ricciardo as the only test and reserve driver of both the F1 teams owned by the Red Bull company. He was constantly given the opportunity in FP1 on most of the race weekends until he joined HRT. Ricciardo was officially contracted by HRT on the 30th of July 2009, replacing Narain Karthikeyan for the remaining races of the season. HRT didn't possess a powerful challenger in that season, and for that reason, Ricciardo failed to deliver anything special. Actually, Red Bull used this opportunity with HRT to provide their junior driver with more exposure to the actual racing conditions in Formula One. At the end of the 2011 season, Red Bull management confirmed that young Ricciardo was going to be included in the 2012 Toro Rosso driver lineup, partnering with Jean-Eric Vergne. He raced with Toro Rosso for the first time at the 2012 Australian Grand Prix, his home circuit. Young Ricciardo was able to finish in 9th position by making an overtake against his teammate Jean-Eric on the last lap. This was the first time that Ricciardo scored points in the Formula One Championship. Unfortunately, after that, he failed to score points in any of the races until the summer break of the 2012 season. But after the summer break, he was able to score some points and completed the season in 18th with 10 points in total. Toro Rosso management decided to continue with their existing driver lineup for the 2013 season. Ricciardo failed to complete the first 2 races of the season due to exhaust issues with his car. Ricciardo then started scoring points by completing the Chinese Grand Prix in 7th, and it was his best finish in F1 up until that point. Ricciardo showed much growth and maturity in that season, outqualifying his teammates in most of the qualifying sessions of the 2013 season. He completed the 2013 season in 13th place on the standings with 20 points, and Red Bull management was satisfied with the experience of Ricciardo and promoted him as the replacement of Mark Webber in their senior team. The Australian driver was partnered at Red Bull with Sebastian Vettel for the 2014 season, and it was evidently quite a challenge for him as he had to compete alongside a 4-time world champion. Ricciardo got an impressive start to the season by being the second fastest in qualifying and also completing the race second behind Hamilton. However, he was unfortunately disqualified after an issue with his fuel system which violated the regulations was found. But he was able to perform very well for the rest of the season, collecting 3 wins and 5 more podiums. He ended up completing the 2014 Formula One Championship in 3rd place, collecting 238 points in total. This can be considered as one of the 2 peak points of his F1 career. Even though Ricciardo wanted to fight strong in 2015, his Renault power unit didn't allow him to do so. Compared with Mercedes and Ferrari power units, Renault's just wasn't strong enough, putting their customers in big trouble. However, Ricciardo did his best with this underperforming RB11 machinery and scored 92 points at the end, finishing 8th in the final standings. But in the next season, Red Bull engineers were able to offer a relatively competitive package to Ricciardo. The Honey Badger was able to return back to his old form, recording 1 win, 7 podiums, 1 pole, and 3 fastest laps at the end of the 2016 season. Most notably, the Australian driver recorded his first ever pole of his F1 career at the 2016 Monaco Grand Prix. The Honey Badger scored 256 points in total, finishing 3rd in the final standings. After this last peak point of Ricciardo's F1 career, his downfall began. In the middle of the 2016 season, he got a new teammate as Red Bull decided to replace Daniil Kvyat with Max Verstappen. Verstappen was very young and inexperienced at that stage, and Ricciardo never thought he would be a challenge to his #1 driver status in the team. The 2017 season was full of good and bad outcomes for Ricciardo, and as a team, Red Bull was never in a position to challenge the Mercedes team, which was dominating the championship at the time. With the available resources, Ricciardo was able to stay 4th in the Drivers' Championship standings for quite a while. However, with the 3rd retirement that he experienced in the latter part of the season, the Honey Badger dropped down to 5th in the standings, showing a considerable decline compared with the previous season. At the beginning of the 2018 season, Ricciardo was once again in excellent form, even though his teammate Max Verstappen had a shaky start to the season. He was able to win 2 of the opening 6 races of the season, giving some hope to the Red Bull team about the championship. However, Ricciardo and his Red Bull team were unable to maintain the same momentum as the season progressed. One of the biggest turning points of his career was the collision with his teammate Max Verstappen at the 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. This led to some kind of dispute between Red Bull management and Ricciardo, as he had the impression that team decisions were more biased towards Verstappen. At that stage, Verstappen had already got an extension for his contract, and Ricciardo was doubtful about his future with the team. When things were going like that, the Red Bull driver made a shocking announcement about his departure from the team at the end of that season. Even though he finished the 28 season in 6th place in the standings with 170 points, he experienced 8 retirements in total. He then joined Renault for the 2019 season on a 2-year contract. The Renault team was never in a strong position at that stage, and this was not a wise move from the Australian driver. The 2019 season was full of frustrations for Ricciardo, with the underperforming Renault Challenger as well as with poor strategies with the team. A 4th-place finish at Monza was the best achievement of the season for Ricciardo. He had to satisfy with a 9th-place finish in the final standings with just 54 points. At the beginning of the 2020 season, he got a new teammate as Renault management decided to end their partnership with Hülkenberg, replacing him with Esteban Ocon. Ricciardo experienced retirement in the opening race of the season in Australia due to an overheating issue with his Renault Challenger. This was a big heartbreak for Ricciardo in front of his home crowd. Compared with the 2019 car, the 2020 Renault Challenger was in good shape, and he was able to score points more regularly. The former Red Bull driver completed the 2020 season in 5th place in the standings with 119 points. However, he was doubtful about his future and looked for any opportunity to join Ferrari as the replacement of Sebastian Vettel. But Ferrari was happy to move ahead with the McLaren driver Carlos Sainz, and Ricciardo joined the Woking-based team as his replacement under a multi-year deal. The Honey Badger was partnered with Lando Norris at McLaren for the 2020 season. He was able to maintain a pretty decent scoring rate with McLaren, recording top 10 finishes in 13 instances. He was able to deliver a victory at the 2021 Italian Grand Prix, which was the team's first victory since 2012. The former Red Bull and Renault driver completed the season in 8th place in the standings with 115 points. However, Ricciardo appeared to be struggling with the configurations of the McLaren cars powered by Mercedes engines, as he used to drive Renault-powered cars on most of the occasions of his F1 career. His second year at McLaren was a total disaster, and McLaren management was unhappy about his performances. He finished only 7 Grand Prix, scoring points, and most notably contributed to only 23% of the team's points. The Woking-based team heavily depended on the performances of Lando Norris, and they wanted to get rid of Ricciardo 1 year before his original contract time was up. Their attempt was successful and brought the F2 champion Oscar Piastri as his replacement for the 2023 season. Once again, he began talks with Red Bull management with the intention of returning back to Red Bull or its sister team AlphaTauri. Red Bull team principal Christian Horner was happy to hire him as the test and reserve driver of the team for the 2023 season. But when Nick de Vries failed in his debut season at AlphaTauri, Red Bull managed to replace him with Ricciardo as his performances in simulators were really impressive. So, he made a return to the grid during the 2023 Hungarian Grand Prix. He completed the 2023 season in 17th place with just 6 points. The Honey Badger got one more life with AlphaTauri for the 2024 season, and the team came with a new identity called Visa Cash App RBF1 Team. Most people expected that the team would be competitive with this new identity. However, they continued their poor form, and they struggled to score points for both their drivers with that underperforming V-Carb Challenger. Red Bull management made a surprising decision to replace Ricciardo with Liam Lawson after the 2024 Singapore Grand Prix. Most notably, Ricciardo competed in that race without knowing it would be his last one. As most of the 2025 driver lineups have already been announced, it's difficult to think that Ricciardo will get an opportunity in next year's grid. Formula One fans are smitten with him as he's famous as being one of the funniest drivers on the current grid. Most people think that Ricciardo didn't receive the farewell that he deserved. However, his F1 career has almost ended. What will be his next move? Share your thoughts in the comments below.